Let me introduce myself. I used to work at Google, then ran my startup FutureCam, then worked as CTO of a startup. I now work as a consulting CTO. Today we are going to look at how to use global and static variables effectively. The first tip is to make them private if possible. This is a date formatter and it is private to this extension. So it can be used only in this code, not the entire program, not even the entire file. Right? Everything should have the minimum scope possible. Suppose I want to rename this. I think this is a diff view. I know I can just do this and it'll work. I don't need to use a refactoring tool. I don't need to check this entire code, this entire file, let alone the entire program. So make the scope as small as possible. Make it private if possible. If private doesn't work, try file private. So here, if you look at this variable called small, size small, it is file private, which means it can be used by this class as well as this function, next size. Right? It's a more open level of access than private. If this were private and put in this class, only this class can use it. But now by putting it at the file level and making it file private, both this class and this function can use it. Try to make global variables constants. Here, for example, this video queue is a queue or a thread on which video is processed. And this is let, which is a constant. So no one can reassign this, which would wreak havoc, right? And this is a good practice in general, but it's even more important for global variables because they're accessible everywhere in the program. You don't want everyone able to modify a global variable. And you can make it both private and let, which is even better. For example, in main controller, this variable, it is both a constant and private to the file. Sometimes you have a situation where other files need to be able to read it but not write it. You can't use a let because this file needs to write it. Let's take an example. If you look at this, has IAP error occurred beyond user control? Basically what this captures is when the user is trying to do an in-app purchase, like start a subscription for the app, an error can occur which is not within the user's control, like Apple servers being down or whatever it is. That is what this variable captures. This can't be let because it needs to be assigned. But we don't want to just make it a global var like this because everyone can now assign it. We don't want that either. We want this file able to assign it, but not other files. And this is where we set it to true, right? So this is a middle level of access control. When appropriate, use the IIFE pattern. To initialize global or static variables, which are effectively the same here. So if you look at this singleton variable is being initialized by an IIFE. So that way you don't have to worry that someone has forgotten to initialize it. So if you were to do it this way, static let shared equal to null, and you have a function called initialize shared. A couple of problems with it, 3 problems actually. One is this can no longer be a let, it has to be a var, which means it can be reinitialized any number of times, which is not what you want. Second, it has to be an optional type, which you don't want, because now every call site has to check that it is null and handle it in some way. You don't want that. Thirdly, someone can forget to call this, or they can call it twice, or they can first use it and then call it. You don't want to have all of those cases. So use the IIFE pattern that solves all of them. It prevents you from accessing an uninitialized instance. When appropriate, couple actions to changes in state. So if you look at this, when the user purchases the app, such as by starting a subscription, this is set to true. And when it is set, well, it's not a boolean, but whatever it may be, right? When the features are unlocked, this notification is posted that causes the UI to update and unlock the features at the UI level. Otherwise, you'll have a situation where someone has paid for the app, but they can't use all the features, right? So couple changes in state to actions that need to be taken. When appropriate, make them computed properties. This variable, preferred auto exposure mode, right, tells you which mode you prefer. And this is a computed property, which means it's a syntactic sugar for a function. So every time you access it, this code runs. And this is fine for this case. When appropriate, encapsulate. If you look at the pending calls, there are two static or global variables, and I'm using the word static and global interchangeably here in this entire video. One is pending calls, which is static. Another is pending calls IMPL, which is again static or global. And this is a thread safe variable. And this one is just an accessor, which accesses the value in a thread safe manner. So this is a level of encapsulation. People think encapsulation is with classes, but no, anything can be encapsulated. So here you have two static vars or two global variables. This is accessible in the entire program. This is accessible only in the file. So that is one idea. When appropriate, you can make variables persistent. But before we go there, one last thing I wanted to point out here is use the appropriate type for global variables. Like it's an unsigned int. This is the pending calls to the gallery. So basically, whenever you save a photo to the iOS gallery, you make a call to the gallery, right? And this variable tracks how many calls are pending. And it has to be an unsigned int because you can't have a negative number of calls pending. So use the appropriate type. This is a good practice in general. It's all the more important for global variables because the scope is the entire program. So that way users of this don't need to check that it is negative and handle the error in some way and so on. When appropriate, make global variables persistent. For example, this app counts the number of light trail videos taken because you get 10 light trail videos free. After that, you have to pay. And this is stored in user defaults, which is the iOS persistence mechanism. So that way, when you restart the app or reboot the phone, the value is not lost. But at the application level, it just looks like a variable. And whenever a light trail is taken, this function light trail taken is invoked and it increments it. So it looks like a Swift variable, but it's actually persistent. And again, notice encapsulation. There's a reader. There's an increment function. There's no setter. So you can't set it to an arbitrary value. You can't decrease it. You can't bump up the number by 3. You can bump it up only by 1 each time. So it is encapsulated. Global variables especially need to be encapsulated because their scope is the entire program, right? You don't want anyone doing whatever they want with it. So I hope the suggestions on global and static variables were useful. If you'd like me to work with your team in improving code quality, there's a link in the description.